The sequel to The Incredibles has been a long time in the making, almost 15 years in fact, and will be hitting the big screen in a few days from now. So naturally it's time to dive into theories about what on earth will happen with our favorite superpowered family in the upcoming movie. And to be frank, a lot of the really compelling fan theories out there have been making the rounds on the good old interwebs, and they're pretty dark. Like, make you really sad about your soft and fuzzy nostalgic Incredibles memories kind of dark. So today we're diving into them with our list of the top 10 Incredibles theories that will ruin your childhood. We'll be discussing theories about the original film, and also ones about what will go down in the sequel. So get ready to get real sad, or at least feel a little remorseful. And at number 10, Edna killed Syndrome. Edna quickly became one of the most entertaining and fan favorite characters from The Incredibles. But what if she helped out our favorite superhero family more than we initially thought, via manslaughter? One theory suggests that the no cape scene from the first movie has had a way bigger impact on their world than we immediately thought. For example, one hero of the past was named Stratagale. She had a cape, and she got sucked into a plane engine because of it. That's dark, but it only gets worse. On the special DVD feature, you can see various super stats, and on hers it says that she was a teenager. Then there's the lawsuits, the public being outraged for the disasters caused by supers. It's likely that the plane that Stratagale was sucked into crashed. Edna would have been the one who designed her suit, meaning she likely blames herself for Stratagale's death, the death of a teenage girl. But here comes the silver lining. It's likely that Syndrome had gone to Edna to design his suit, and seeing that he was a villain, what did she do? Give him a cape. Although the last part of the theory is a bit of a long shot since it's likely that Buddy crafted the suit himself along with all of his other gear and tech, it does seem like a way that Edna would have redeemed herself. Guilt can make you do lots of stuff. And at number 9, Syndrome and the government. Syndrome's whole shtick in the first Incredibles was to lure supers to his island and kill them all off. But one theory from Honeybee Hound on Reddit speculates that his genocide was actually sanctioned by the government. Honeybee points out that those government agents, the ones who watch over retired supers to make sure that they don't reveal their identities, run a relocation program. When Bob tosses his boss through several walls, an agent shows up offering to relocate him, but ends up wiping everyone's memories instead. So, if they're watching the supers, why didn't they do anything about Syndrome's island? They must have known about it. Or at least realize that a bunch of the supers were inevitably disappearing or dying. This suggests that they were in cahoots with Syndrome, or at least turning a blind eye to his activities, perhaps seeing him as a suitable solution to their super problems. It would be pretty cost efficient for them to do so instead of continuing to operate the way that they were. The theory also speculates that because Buddy was a business entrepreneur, the government could have been one of his clients, with him making tech for them. That being said, if he was selling tech to the government, that could also be a reason why they didn't act on his island experiments. Perhaps he infiltrated their own tracking system in order to hide his activities from them. Up next, number 8, 15 years. As we mentioned at the top of our video, it's been almost 15 years since the original film debuted. While most fans found this infuriating, others picked up on it to mean much more. There's a scene in the first film where Syndrome tells Mr. Incredible he can't call off his missile because he's too late. 15 years too late. This was a reference to how Mr. Incredible treated him back when they first encountered each other, and that 15 years had passed with Buddy holding a vendetta against him. Now this theory speculates that this statement and the release of the second film 15 years later is somehow connected. While the initial theory believed that the sequel would take place 15 years after the first, based off the trailers that is clearly not the case. This then led to more discussion that a catastrophic event that was set in motion in the first film will be what affects our heroic family in this movie, making that 15 years too late statement all too true. And at number 7, Jack isn't unique. Jack wowed audiences with his plethora of abilities in the first Incredibles movie, and based on the trailers for the second, it looks like he's still got all of those tricks up his sleeve, or diaper, rather. According to one Reddit user named SpasMitHands, don't be surprised if those powers dissipate pretty darn soon. They speculate that just because he has a ton of powers now doesn't mean that he'll retain those gifts. This is rooted in how Jack first displays his powers. His whole family isn't all that surprised that he can do many different things, so perhaps this is how powers manifest initially in the world of the Incredibles. A child who has powers can do a bunch of crazy stuff, but as they grow older, their body latches onto a specific ability that works with their personalities and skills. Violet is defensive and shy. She can create force fields and become invisible. Dash is impatient, so he's a speedster. So it wouldn't be surprising if by the end of the second film, Jack's powers settle on one ability. Up next at 6, Boo and Sully. A theory loosely based on the Pixar theory, the theory that states all Pixar movies are interconnected. This one explores the idea that Boo from Monsters Inc. is actually Violet. There's a scene in Monsters Inc. where Sully drops Boo behind a door and closes it. Then he turns around and she's there, without him noticing. YouTuber KmackTime has speculated that this may prove that Boo does in fact have powers. She became invisible and quickly ran out behind Sully, and that's how he didn't notice her doing it. Or perhaps she teleported, maybe having multiple powers while being so young if we're riffing off of that Jack theory from earlier on in our list. Boo also doesn't disappear when she's scared, just how like Violet couldn't use her powers when she was scared or under pressure. Boo also made a cameo in Toy Story 3 as one of the girls in the kindergarten class, and she looks a whole lot like Violet, minus having a slightly different hair color now as a teen. And lastly, the reason why she isn't afraid of Sully is because he reminds her of her father, who is of a similar stature, which is why she clings to him. He reminds her of home, and that's why she trusts him. Makes Monsters Inc. just a little even more heart-wrenching, doesn't it? And at number 5, Eradication. When supers were outlawed, it made sense that most of them would calmly go into retirement, because, you know, they're heroes. But what about the supervillains? Where do they all go? This theory from Redditor Quirky Peeker explores the idea that the government eradicated all supervillains after the supers were outlawed. Most villains in the film were depicted as being normal humans, and police would have been able to neutralize their threats, albeit being in more danger, that is. But if that were the case, the villains probably would have died carrying out their crimes. Bon Voyage, for example, may have been taken out as a last resort if the police were dealing with the situation. So with all that in mind, it would have been easy for the government to purge all of these villains that the supers would have dealt with in more kind ways. Now, considering all of that, let's dive in even deeper. If those are the kinds of villains that were popping up, why did we not see any villains who had powers? It seems unlikely that every individual who developed superpowers would have been down to only use them for good, especially when the heroes were outlawed. So who's to say that the government didn't intervene and use extreme measures? Like brutally hunting them down and killing them in a way similar to our previous syndrome government theory. Up next, number 4, cheating husband. This theory pokes at the idea that Bob cheated on Helen. In the beginning of The Incredibles, Helen suspects that Bob cheated on her after she finds a strand of blonde hair on his suit. In reality, he's been hiding his return to his heroics, but he's been pretty sneaky about it, and she's picked up on it. Or is it just that? Now, Redditor Ogwalt posted a theory that suggests he was actually having an affair while all of this was going on. This is because we never actually see Bob in close proximity to Mirage for her hair to get on him, and Mirage does seem to have some sort of attraction to Bob too. Mirage also has no idea that he's married until she meets Helen, so if Bob did make a move on her, she would have been oblivious and probably DTF. That being said, another offshoot of this theory is that Bob had a past of being unfaithful to Helen before, hence why she jumped to those conclusions rather than putting 2 and 2 together about him hiding his return to being a superhero. Either way, pretty unsettling. In our number 3 spot, Dash is a villain. This theory from Reddit user Professor Wonder suggests that Dash will be the antagonist of the second film. But how? Well, let's take a look at his abilities. There's a history of the family always telling Dash to rein in his powers. Bob and Helen are constantly reminding him to keep his super speed powers under control. The theory suggests that as a teenager, he'll be even less susceptible to listening to them. On top of that, he has a history of using his powers to misbehave. He once put a tack on his teacher's seat. As Professor Wonder put it, Dash is able to garner some positive attention by doing something negative. Now compare that to Buddy from the first film. All he wanted to do was become Mr. Incredible's sidekick, and when he was shut down, he became the supervillain syndrome. Could a similar formula go down with Dash? While the possibilities of Dash turning against his parents out of teen angst don't really seem entirely out of character, becoming a full-blown villain may be a bit of a stretch for the speedster hero. In our number 2 spot, Edna is a reformed villain. It's hard to not look at Edna and think that she's got some serious villain face at times. It's true, her expressions can look downright sinister. While most of us just chalk that up to intensity and passion, it got others thinking. According to a theory posted by Fifth Circle of Nell on Reddit, Edna may be a reformed villain. They break it down into 5 points. The first being that she's got a throwaway line about not looking back or dwelling on the past because it's distracting. Second, she's a bit of a fanatic when it comes to witnessing combat. Third, I quote, "Her entire facility is somewhat villainous. The style is severe and imposing. It's equipped with auto turrets, flamethrowers, and explosive ordnance. It's surrounded by a gate and has armed guards. Now other supers and those associated with them live in hiding, but they don't seem to feel like they're in any sort of danger in their day-to-day. And neither does Edna. She has those things because she likes them. Fourth, she doesn't seem to like her guards that much. Fifth Circle of Nell suggests that this is because they're government handlers, and she's been allowed to operate still because she's reformed. Even if they weren't government handlers, she does treat them in a way that a villain would treat their minions. And lastly, she made a suit for Jack, which is something that the Pars would never have considered doing. The argument behind this point is that Edna thinks like a villain, and knows that Syndrome would still target Jack regardless of his age. So all that being said, kinda makes sense, doesn't it? And finally, in our number 1 spot, Violet isn't Bob's daughter. This one comes from a Reddit user named DesiLonda101, who dived deeper into the mystery as to why Violet's hair color is different than the rest of the family's. Now, in case you didn't notice, Violet's hair is black, whereas everyone else is blonde, minus Mrs. Incredible's dark red. While most assume that Violet, being a tween, must have dyed it, this theory speculates that this actually isn't the case. There was a character who lends Helen a plane in the first film. so that she can get to Syndrome's island. His name is Snug. He was initially supposed to be the one who piloted it and dies in a crash, but this was all cut from the film since there wasn't enough time to develop his character. But we do get to see a photograph of him, with his arm around Helen. He's wearing a baseball cap, but underneath his hair looks fairly dark. So the theory suggests that perhaps Helen had slept with Snug in the early days of when supers were being outlawed, since times were tough and Bob had difficulty holding down a job, meaning there was likely some marital disagreement. Being unable to hold a job, the couple likely had to move around quite a bit, so she wouldn't have been able to maintain the affair. She eventually finds out that she's pregnant with Violet, and it brings her and Bob closer together. To further emphasize the possibility that this affair could have happened, consider this. Helen keeps the photo of Snug in her room next to a picture of the family. When she borrows the plane from him, she says, "I'm calling in a solid you owe me." Helen's assumption that Bob is cheating in the beginning of The Incredibles may be because of residual guilt that she has for having an affair, making her jump to that kind of conclusion. And lastly, if you compare the kinds of powers that Violet's brothers have versus hers, the other two have shown traits that are more fitting of being Mr. Incredible's children. And if none of that convinced you, look at the shape of Violet's head. It's a pretty spot-on match for Snug's head shape, isn't it? On the flip side, if you're not a fan of this theory, you may be glad to hear that in the initial concept art for Snug, he didn't have black hair. It was more of an ashy blonde. Alright, there we have it, friends. Which of these theories do you think actually stands a chance of being accurate? Which ones do you think are complete BS? And if any of these actually panned out, how do you think they'd affect the upcoming film? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know all of your thoughts and feels. If you dug this video, why not hit that like button? And click subscribe if you'd like to hang out with us some more and see other great Incredibles videos. Speaking of, we have a bunch of videos on our channel that pertain to all things superheroes, so be sure to click on that playlist flashing on your screen right now for more nerdy goodness. In the meantime, thanks for watching everybody. I'll catch you all in the next video.